The next question we are doing is number 52, but we already did a couple questions like that, so please refer back to number 1 and number 2, and I believe there was also a third on your review like this. The next one we're doing is number 54. We're given two lines, y equals, or in this case, q equals 8x, and y equals 3x. Line Q has a slope of 8, and line P has a slope of 3. So it's telling us to compare and contrast the two lines. Well, one thing that we know about the slopes of lines is the larger the slope, the steeper the line, and the smaller the slope, the flatter the line. And we also, in this situation, ignore negatives. So you just look at the number, ignore the negative. So going on this track, line Q has a larger slope. So line Q is going to be steeper. So that's how you would compare and contrast the two. Line Q is steeper because it has a larger slope, or you can say line P is flatter because it has a smaller slope. Either way, it means the same thing. All right, so let me make that full screen. And with this one, you could also type them in your calculator, 8x and 3x, and compare them. So let's type those in our calculator. The first equation is y equals 8x. Let me look at the graph. Okay, and let me also type in into y2, y equals 3x, and look at the graph. So 8x is the blue line, and the blue line is steeper or taller than the red line, which is 3x, and the red line is flatter. So blue line has a larger slope, steeper, red line has a smaller slope, flatter. So that's another way you could have looked at that problem. The next one is number 55. So with this one, we need to write an equation. I see, again, that keyword per, and remember that the other keywords are each and every. So I know in my equation that number 5 is going to go with x. And then my fee or charge is $50, so plus 50. So now what we need to look at is, what does x represent? Well, it says $5 per strand of lights. So we know that this x represents 1 strand, or 2 strands, or 3 strands, or 4 strands. So we plug that number in. And after that's all said and done, the y is going to give us the total cost. So for example, y equals 5, and say I had 2 strands. 5 times 2 plus 50. So then my total cost would be 5 times 2 is 10, and 10 plus 50 is 60. So then my total cost would be $60. But this situation is telling us that our total cost is $175. So what we're going to do is substitute that total cost in place of y. So 175 equals 5x plus 50. And then I'm going to solve the equation for x. So subtract 50 from both sides, and we get 5x equals 125. And if we divide by 5 on both sides, x is equal to, so x is equal to 25. So if she paid a total of $175, that means she bought 25 strands. And the next one would be number Going back to number 55, that question could also be a calculator question. You have an equation, y equals 5x plus 50, and then you just type it into your calculator. So y equals 5x plus 50, and we need to look where the total cost is 175. What will the x value be? So let me go to my table, and let me find a total cost of 175, which is right here. A total cost of 175, which means she's going to buy 25 strands of lights. So that's another way you could have worked this problem. Now the next one we are going to do is number 60. Right, number 60. It says use the graph below to answer the questions. Point C is in what quadrant and what are the coordinates of B? All right, so it may have been a while since we talked about quadrants, but the quadrants go counterclockwise, so they go the opposite way of a clock. So this quadrant is the first quadrant, where we have positive x values and positive y values. This quadrant is the second quadrant, where we have negative x values and positive y values. This quadrant is the third quadrant, where we have negative x values and negative y values. And this quadrant is the fourth quadrant, where we have positive x values and negative y values. Now, it says point C is in which quadrant? Point C is right here. It is in quadrant 3. And then it asks the coordinates of point B. Well, that should be an easy one. Point B is right here in red. So the x value of point B is 1, 2. And the y value is negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. And the next one we are doing is number 62. And number 62 asks us to choose the graph that best illustrates the owner's findings, which is that the more expensive concert tickets were, which means the more they sold. So if concert tickets are getting more expensive, that means that price is going up. And if as concert tickets are getting more expensive, they're selling more, that means that also goes up, the number that they sell. So I need both the x value to be increasing and the y value. And if I look at A, that's not happening. C, I need both the x value and the y value to increase. That's not happening. For B, I need both my x and y values to increase. While the y values are increasing, let's look at this part. It's going downhill, so my x values are decreasing. It's not B. And if I look at D, my y values are going up, and as well as my x values, those are also increasing. So for example, the point 1, 1, then the point 2, 2, then 3, 3, then 4, 4, then the point 5, 5, and 6, 6, and so on. So both my x and y values are increasing, which means as the tickets are getting more expensive, they are selling more. So the answer is D. The next one we are going to look at is number 63. Find the range. Now what I taught my students is to use the saying robot with the capital R, capital B, and a capital T. The R stands for range. The B stands for bottom. And the T stands for top. So the saying says range goes from bottom to top. And if we were talking about domain, we would use dealer. Capital D, capital L, capital R. D stands for domain. The L stands for left. and the R stands for right. So the dealer part means that domain goes from left to right. But since we're talking about range, let's focus on robots. So if I look at this function, the bottom of it starts here. That is kind of crooked. Let me fix that. And Miss McCaslin is laughing at me. So the bottom starts here, and the top, it ends right here. So since this is a straight line, it's not just dots, it's not discrete, it's continuous because it's a straight line, so we know we're going to use inequality symbols. So the bottom of my graph starts at -2, -2, then I have my inequality symbols. Range is talking about the y values, and at the top it ends at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So in other words, my range says that my y values go from -2 to -7. And if we look at our graph, that's true because all of our y values are between -2 and a +7. The next one that we are going to do is number 69. Change the following into slope-intercept form. Now we should all remember that y equals mx plus b is really called, in fancy terms, slope-intercept form. So in other words, we need to solve for y. So let's go ahead and do that. If I need to get my y's by themselves, I need to move my x's to the other side. So if it's negative, I need to make it positive. So plus 6x. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. So bring down my 3y, bring down my equals, and because 15 does not have an x with it, I cannot add 15 and 6x. So I just rewrite it as 15 plus 6x. And the 3 and y, when we have a letter and a number together with nothing in between, that's really multiplication. So to separate the 3 and the y, I have to do the opposite of multiplication, which is to divide by 3. And what you do to one side, you do to the other. So I get y is equal to 15 divided by 3 is 5, and 6 divided by 3 is 2, but it has an x with it. Some of you like to see your mx in the front, so we can rewrite this as y equals, I'm going to bring my positive 2x to the front and take my positive y and put it in the back. So now we have it in y equals mx plus b form. The next one that we are doing is number 72. Is the graph shown a function? Now, when we talked about functions, we talked about something called the vertical line test. And so vertical lines go up and down. And so the way we determine if this is a function is we draw vertical lines through every point on our graph. And if there's more than 2 dots on any of those lines, then it is not a function. So let me start here. I'm going to draw, let me actually use this. So vertical lines all over our graph. And if I actually look right here on this vertical line, I not only have 1 dot on it, but I have 2 dots. So I know automatically that this is not a function. The next one that we are working on is number 82. Write the inequality for the following graph. So the first thing we can do is just write the equation of the line. Our y-intercept is -1, 2, 3. And let's also find our slope. So let me choose this point right here. So my rise is 1, 2, 3, 4, and my run is 1, 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. So there's my slope. So I know the equation of this line is going to be y equals 2x. My y-intercept is -3, so minus 3. Now, I am shaded below, so this should not be an equal sign. If it's shaded below, I should have a less than sign, because that means that y is shaded below. Now let's look at the kind of line we have. We have a dotted line. A dotted line means we're going to have this symbol. If it was a solid line, we would have the less than symbol with an equal sign underneath. But it is not solid, it is dotted. So this is your equation for the inequality. The next one we're going to do is number 79.